Chewing time with Korean movies.
Victims of self-denial happens in top surroundings. In Korean history, Confucianism sometimes urged the victim to hide their physical and mental damage from society. The society sometimes was cruel to the victims, especially victims were women who are the weak in the society. One of the obvious words for woman is 환양년, which means witch or prostitute. 환양년 was from 환향녀, which means homecoming back woman. In Joseon dynasty, one king surrendered to King dynasty troops. An army took many girls as a trophy of victory to the king. Some of these women came back home after some years. Many people looked down upon them and called them as 환양녀, which means dirty women who couldn't keep their virginity. The poor women were ashamed of themselves and tried to hide their faces with wide hats. One of the words lowering a girl is kasna, which is from kasun eye. Kat means hat, so it means a girl who is wearing a hat. Wrongdoing in silence, and the society is cold and indifferent to the victims. So, the victims are keeping their painful memories. The same is the case of comfort women and labor women who came back from Japan after gaining Korean independence. Japanese governments refused to admit their crime. Korean governments made compact without agreements of victims. Victims won't resolve their deep sorrow. Busan is the second largest city in Korea. Dongseokmun runs a large travel agency in Busan. Dongseok volunteers help the weak in Busan and donate regularly.
이번 달은 기부액이 와 이래 적습니까?
One day, our business is suspended for 3 months due to the illegal program for travelers from Japan. If we show the interview of one comfort woman in Seoul, Dongseok's friends suggest making the office of travel agents a call center for comfort woman victims for 3 months. It will be helpful for recovering the reputation of her business, which fell down because of inappropriate program.
공간만 내준 게다. 별일 없으면 퇴근들하라.
Dongseok lives with her daughter and housemaid Jeonggil. Jeonggil has lived with her for 16 years, so Dongseok's daughter has to think her like a real grandmother. When Jongseok knows that her daughter has been absent from school for 3 days, he shouts if you sleep one step the wrong way, your life might be miserable as the comfort woman. That afternoon, he received a note from Jeonggil that she will quit the work. He said, "Children are treasure. I'll quit the work, and I don't need money." When Dongseok visits Jeonggil, she is laying herself with a face hurt by her son. Her son Sunmo looks drunk and violent, but he suffered from the congenital syphilis. The poor woman victims are like a scarlet-letter woman. They always try to hide their scars from the people. Jong-soo tried to persuade the victims not to hide themselves from reality.
그런 건 걱정 마시고.
She finds that when the victims are suffering from the prejudice of
한 번만 더
society,
생각해 주시면 안
so
되겠습니까?
they have
예?
difficulty revealing the truth. She also learns they often fell into a kind of self-denial as a victim. She is shocked when her housemaid Jong-gil visits the center and Jong-suk understands why Jong-gil left her. She makes up her mind to help the victims hurt by Japan.
와 얘기 안 했어 얘. 우리가 같이 살다 몇
Begin
년이나
a long-term court battle against the Japanese government.
내 영업 재개에도 센터 안 빼기로 했다.
이래 부저씨 당한 할매들이 있는데.
She begins a long-term court battle against the Japanese government, asking for their sincere apology to the victims. In 1992, Jong-suk and victims and brave Japanese lawyers and supporters in Japan started a long court battle in Shimonoseki. TV's broadcast the news of comfort woman victims' court battle, even though many cases of pure cancellation from Japan are falling to make her business in trouble. Jong-suk never surrendered to the difficult situation. When Haesu sees the granny Jong-gil coming to her classroom tell the real story of comfort woman, she feels shocked and sad. And her soul comes to wake up to hear the sadness of comfort woman. Young students in the classroom try to cheer her up, saying, "Grandmother is pretty and beautiful." Now Jong-suk and four victims are ready to confront the court battle. The first court plaintiff, Junior Bak, was trying to forget her trauma with the smoking from the bitter memories and experience as a comfort woman. A deep sadness from the memories of all kinds of Japanese soldiers abusing her, and the trauma from the brutal behavior that cut her belly and womb and threw the bloody fetus and threw it down on the floor and threw it on into fearful anger. And she shouted and cursed in the court, but her testimony is permitted only for 8 minutes. The granny is complaining why the Japanese court didn't allow the grandmother to make a statement more. But on the other hand, they feel they experience dignity as a human being while bursting with anger for the first time in their lives. The Japanese court doesn't admit her statement as a reliable testimony. It just asks for clearer evidence. Okju, who loved to watch peach blossom and wear the flower-printed red shoes, comes to Shimonoseki court for the second testimony. When she comes out of the airport and sees a man who is wearing a uniform, she is frightened and sits down and refuses to come out. She feels scared and shouts. She goes back home. Jong-gil and other grannies soothe her by telling her to go watch peach blossom. Okju smiles faintly as if she's watching the scenery of full blooming of peach blossom. Who is like a young child tells the memory of an innocent girl. Her father said, I'm sorry, and gave her a pair of pretty flower shoes, saying, wouldn't it be better if the son would be left in the family line? The innocent girl left the house saying, it's okay, but I'm sorry, I couldn't feed the cow. She says, she wanted to buy pretty clothes and buy pills to fix her brain to be smart again with the compensation money. And suddenly she sinks to her knee, begging sorry at order to be seated from the judge. Now, She writes herself on the floor, crying, "Don't hit me. My head hurt. It hurt." The lawyer of the defense claimed that her testimony in the state of dementia is not valued as any evidence.
その通りです。
The lawyer for the plaintiff shouted that she is the most obvious evidence of victims by assault or confrontation. The Japanese court decided Okji's testimony cannot be selected as evidence in value because it has no coherence. He wondered if the Japanese government seemed to just wait for grandmother's death. Yongsuk put a notice in the paper that the victims of the campus station and labor station pleaded to keep any information or observe the fact from witnesses. He appeals to the moral conscience of Japanese. Rennie Gisunso feels embarrassed. Even though testimony at Japanese court is her right as a human being, she also feels afraid of the situation she cannot endure. Collecting the horrible memories before Japanese is like a huge torture to herself. Fortunately, one Japanese who was Gisun's homeroom teacher in her elementary school says she'll give related information. Gisun begins her testimony at the Shimonoseki court. Gisun, who was a 6th grade student, was sent to the labor station and cut 6,000 bullets every day. And later, she inserted thousands of filaments in the electric bulb every day. The working time seems endless. The young girl was always exhausted in hunger, but she was not paid for her labor, not even a penny. When they were taken out of the factory one day, everyone was happy, thinking they were out to see the flowers. But they were taken to a spacious room, and soldiers came in and picked a girl one by one. Gisun also was dragged out by one soldier, but she didn't follow the word. Then the soldier got angry and cut her wildly on her back. Gisun showed her a terrible scar on her back and says she has been feeling the horrible pain for life. Then Sugimura, the homeroom teacher, comes to the court and testifies Gisun's statement was right, and she heartily apologized for her fault to Gisun. They hold their hands together and tear at the court. Jong-suk and Jong-gil visit Nanjing, China, where Jong-gil stays in a Japanese military campus station, and they make videos there to show her vivid memories. Jong-gil testifies in court, and he continues calm statements about the pain of herself and her son due to the bad influence of Japanese military sexual slavery's life. But when the lawyer of defense showed the documents that there is no record of her giving birth to the baby, Jong-gil stopped her testimony. Jong-suk urged her to give more explanation about the documents, but she refused. Her testimony and the validity of court case are losing credibility. When Lee Gisun passed away, actually a small history disappeared permanently. Jong-gil silently comes to Jong-suk, who holds the lonely funeral of Gisun, who has lived without family, and says she'll have a testimony at court again. Jong-gil tells a story about her life at the campus station.
할머니랑 같이요.
He says,
가면은
I followed them because
간호사를
they would teach me to be a nurse, but it was comfort station. Kumok and Jongil endure the toughness of comfort woman's life, taking care of each other. But they caught syphilis due to the long terms of lives as comfort woman. The chemical for treatments could leave serious side effects. Jongil could overcome the side effect, but Kumok couldn't, so he became so weak. Kumok gave birth to the baby in such a serious condition, so her health was terribly bad. Miyazaki, who felt pity for Kumok, decided to send Kumok back home. Kumok begged Jongil to go with her. They took the train for days and days to go back home. When Jongil was comforting Kumok's baby, soldiers came and dragged Kumok. Kumok didn't give a glance at her baby even just one time and was dragged. Jongil couldn't tell them the baby was not her baby because she was so afraid of being taken to such a hell again. She has felt sorry about that for life. She makes up her mind to raise her baby with all heart. But my son inherited a terrible disease, she said. The cart comes soon, and the son soon will understand the mother's sacrifice. Jongil shouts, I know you can't make me back to the days of my 17. So, Japanese government apologized in 1990. The court announced Japanese government should pay $3,000 for victims, but has no duty to apologize to the victims. This was not enough to the victims, but meaningful because it was achieved by individuals without any help from the country. We saw the greatness of individuals who never gave up for keeping moral responsibility and moral conscience. The 23 times so hot battle of 6 years led the first and only partial victory of compensation for comfort woman victims. Jungsuk Mon built Nation and Women's History Museum to remember the victims of Japanese military sexual slavery and open to public on free. Now, she's trying to work on registering the court record with UNESCO.